it's very precise in terms of execution, but very imprecise in terms of how you assess it. And really, the only best way to do it is to send somebody down in the hole to see what happens.
Would you suggest that as an option now at Fordo and the other couple of places, or are we maybe that's not a proper risk to be taking? Okay, General, first of all, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'd love, first of all, your overall reaction to what occurred in Iran a week ago now, pretty much, in terms of the US involvement. Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised about the outcome. We've been training for this mission. The weapons were specifically designed for these targets for over a decade. So any B-2 pilot that has been in service in that time has participated in the training that goes along with it. And so it's well scripted, well choreographed, well supported, well resourced in this case with a comprehensive deception plan. So I was not surprised about the success of the mission, because I think the success was preordained by all the hard work and really science and engineering for the weapon that went into it.
It's such a fascinating space, in that I was a sports host for many years, and we would often talk about the fact that you can't replicate a real game, a professional level game. You can train and do all the things, but nothing can prepare you essentially for that level of contact and performance until you get in that arena and experience it. But you obviously couldn't be dropping those kind of weapons just in random places to practice. How did you get as close as possible to real life scenario, also replicating nerves and adrenaline, and what kind of tricks do you guys use?
Well, we have very realistic training scenarios that happen in the simulator, for example, so we can simulate a lot of the threats just like you'd see them. We can simulate other aircraft being there, make all the calls. So it's very high fidelity when you do it in the simulator. And then, of course, we have places like Red Flag, which is one of our big training, live flight training programs that we do to simulate the combat environment. In fact, it was designed after the Vietnam War, when we were losing a lot of pilots in their initial combat sorties. So basically, that's designed to give them their first few combat sorties in a realistic environment. And we've found over time that it's been quite successful. So yeah, you can't play the real game, but the way that we train is as real as it gets, and prepares the pilots quite well for it's so strenuous that by the time you actually do the mission for real, in many cases, it's a lot more sedate than the training environment.
What is it like to fly one of those aircraft, to be in it for a long period of time?
It's just like almost riding in an airliner, except you're sitting in an ejection seat and doing mission tasks. The airplane's quite easy to fly. There's a lot of high stress time when you're going to do a mission like this. Approximately 6, 7, 8 refuelings, where you're in very close proximity to another big aircraft taking thousands of pounds of gas. It takes something like 30 minutes each time. So those are always you're very intense during those, because you have to maintain very close contact with the aircraft in front of you. And then, of course, any time in enemy territory when you could potentially face a threat. And then the takeoff and landing. So the rest of the time, it's kind of rehearsing things that you got to know, preparing for the next leg of the journey, and a lot of quite frankly boring drone time.
When you're simulating hitting a target, or you're doing it for real in a training environment, how quickly do you know, and how accurately do you know how well that went, essentially, in layman's terms, how close you got? Are you straight away, you can see that you nailed it, or do you need to wait for data to come back? How does that work?
It all depends on the type of target. You know, the B-2 is designed to go after strategic targets. A lot of the times, those targets are what we call hard and deeply buried targets, which means that you have to drop a special weapon that has a special kind of fuse that allows the weapon to penetrate down to where the thing that you're going after is, so that it can explode at the right depth of burial. Those types of targets are very, very difficult to do battle damage assessment on, because typically all you'll see is a hole where the weapon penetrated. And even sometimes there's been many times where I've seen we've gone back and struck a target several times, only to later find out that the hole that we had missed was sitting in a shadow from the air, the whatever asset collected the information about that target. So it's not easy to assess a hard and deeply buried target. Kind of what you have to do is understand, if you have good intelligence on the target, understand how the weapon should perform, make an assessment on whether you believe the weapon to have performed, with scorch marks or whatever is on the outside of that hole. But even with that, we've dropped fused weapons into a space where the weapon has gone completely below the area where it's supposed to explode, and so what you end up is a hole in the floor, and not really a lot of damage to maybe the aircraft you were going after. So it's very precise in terms of execution, but very imprecise in terms of how you assess it. And really, the only best way to do it is to send somebody down in the hole to see what happened.
Would you suggest that as an option now at Fordo and the other couple of places, or are we maybe that's not a proper risk to be taking?
Well, I mean, the Iranians control that territory, so
Mm.
I don't know that I want to send somebody down there with uncooperative Iranian troops. Um, and maybe that won't be a possibility. But if we really want to know what actually happened to that target, there is no better way to find out. Otherwise, your next best chance is to talk to somebody who has actually been there. I suspect that's what we're going to do. The Israelis probably have some of the Iranians that pass information, and maybe even third hand. And I suspect what we're going to try to do is get information from somebody that's actually been down in there to see what happened.
Did it make you proud to see the way that it was carried out, given your close association with this aeroplane and this team of people for a very long time?
It does. Me and my wife watched Top Gun 2, and she mentioned after the movie, she said, "Well, they went through a lot there. Why didn't they just use a B-2?" And so it is good to have people finally know what we do. I mean, it is a very small elite team for very strategic targets, and not very well known, just because there's just not that many of them. But it is good to know that the team performed as rehearsed, and did so well. And I think the stock for that unit, that their stock is really high right now.
I think your wife might be challenging Hegseth for for that position. She seems to know her stuff. Final question. Excuse me. Was there an element? I know with my dad, when he went through Duntroon, which was officer training here in Australia, and he graduated, I think, about a month after the Vietnam War ended, and he was certainly not, someone who was desperate for war. In fact, he joined the army to help avoid wars, but there was a part of him very disappointed because he trained incredibly hard for that purpose. Was there a part of you disappointed that a mission of this significance, because I believe it's one of the most significant in recent times in terms of securing the safety, not just of your nation, but places like Australia and places that rely on the US. Was there an element of not jealousy, that's the wrong word, but would you have loved to have been a part of it, or you just can't think like that because you just... what was
No,
your
I
emotional
I, I think I
reaction?
think yeah, I think anybody that does this business at any time that's worked as hard as you do, wants to be part of the mission. The same, your sports analogy is great because it's the same thing. You want to be in the game.
General, thank you so very much for your time and giving us an insight that we otherwise would not have known. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.